Welcome back, everyone. You took the picture? Oh, that's great. Don't mind us. We're just having a conversation before the interview. This is Walt Lender, who is the Executive Director of the Lake George Association. Welcome.
Thanks for having me.
Every time Walt is here, we wind up just talking about the majesty of Lake George, the beauty of Lake George, and the responsibility that all of us have to make absolutely certain that we do our part to preserve the Queen of American Lakes. Boy, you know, you say something like that and you feel it right from your heart out.
It's a special, special place.
I know. So, Walt, just in case people don't know, you've been executive director over a decade, right?
Yes, over a decade, in my 14th year now.
Yeah. All right. So let's just say over the 14 years, changes for the better, changes for the worse, changes.
I'd say the changes in the water quality have been negligible, which is great, and changes in the lake community has been a great improvement. We're seeing a lot of cooperation amongst the entities, amongst the different municipalities. A lot of municipalities and elected officials are really on board with what we are all doing to protect Lake George. They realize it's a very special place for them. It's a very special place for visitors, and it's what drives the local economy. So Lake George is really it.
Well, you know what? I've seen over the years cooperation amongst all of the different organizations that touch the lake.
Yes.
There's a lot of cooperation there. But you really, the Lake George Association is really the big dog. I mean, you're the one.
We are, and we've been doing that for over 130 years.
Yes,
I mean, we're one of the first lake associations in the country, and certainly the oldest, and we've been there at the beginning of the conservation movement. So we're really sort of a pioneer in this. And I firmly believe that because this organization's been around for as long as it has, that Lake George is in the great condition that it's in now.
Well, a highly respected organization, too. Anybody you talk to. I want to talk about some of the key things that Walt and his team are involved with to make certain that the lake does stay well preserved for generations to come. I love saying that. Let's talk about invasive species. How are we making out there?
Well, no new invasive species discovered in the last few years. That's largely because we have a mandatory boat inspection program now on Lake George. For about 6 years, the Lake George Association ran a voluntary program, which means we were asking boaters, can we inspect your boats? Do you have any invasive species? Please don't bring any to Lake George. Through that 6-year effort, we were able to collect data where all these boats are coming from, other lakes, other water bodies, and what invasive species are out there in those water bodies. And that was a real eye-opener for people, to the point where we all realized that the best way to protect Lake George would be to have a mandatory inspection program. So now the Lake George Park Commission, the state agency that governs Lake George, requires all boats to be inspected, and they must be clean, drained, and dry before entering Lake George, so there's no invasive species on them.
You know what? We have an inspection station right near our home in Hague, and they do quite a job on it. You know what's interesting, too, is you would think that someone who wants to enter the lake would be annoyed by this. They're not. There is a lot of cooperation with the boat owners. They seem to understand what we're doing.
Absolutely. This has been a very successful program, and I think the boaters come to Lake George because they want to enjoy the fishery, they want to enjoy the clean water, the beautiful scenery. They don't want to do anything that harms the boats or that harms the lake. And honestly, they realize that an inspection program, it doesn't really take much time out of their day. It doesn't slow them down. It takes about 5 or 6 minutes to have your boat inspected. And if you do your work before you come to Lake George, if your boat is already clean, drained, and dry, you sail right through that program.
Now, I think at last count, Lake George recognized about 6 or 7 invasive species,
We have 6 invasive species and no new ones.
Yeah. How about milfoil? Under control, trying to get it? That's a tough one.
Milfoil is a very big challenge for Lake George. It's been in the lake for about 20 years, but what we found is the efforts that we've done in the past 5 or 6 years, working with the Lake George Park Commission and with the investments by the local municipalities and the state agencies, other nonprofits around the lake, we're seeing some headway in knocking back that particular invasive species. Milfoil is very, very harmful to a lake, especially in shallow areas near shore, which is where most people want to recreate.
That's where we see it, yes,
right.
Of course.
So what we're doing is this hand harvesting program, so that really has seen a lot of success.
We have a lot of friends on the lake, and we all hand harvest. We do, and it works. You know, surprisingly enough, you think, okay, I want to do something, you know, storm water or salt runoff.
Stormwater runoff is by far the most challenging and harmful effect, has the most challenging and harmful effect on water quality in Lake George, more so than septic systems and other things like that. Because stormwater runoff carries with it harmful nutrients, which fuel algae growth and plant growth. It's like fertilizing the lake.
That's right.
It also carries with it petrochemicals and sand and sediment that we want to keep out of the lake as well. And it carries with it road salt, which travels in its dissolved form through the water, through the ditch network, into the streams, into the lake. So what we try to do is encourage municipalities, homeowners, anyone to stop stormwater in its tracks, right where it is. Keep it on your property, put it back into the groundwater, help replenish the groundwater, because a lot of people have wells. And that way you keep the harmful nutrients out of the lake, you keep the salt out of the lake, you keep the sediment from getting into the lake.
You know what, I think what this all points to is that you have to show a lot of respect for a lake, an ecosystem that is delicate, yet vibrant in so many ways, but so incredibly unique. Name another body of water that you've ever seen where you can look 15 feet down and see the bottom. For the thousands of times, Walt, that I've been on that lake, every single time I just stop and just stare.
It is amazing. We've got some footage from drones that we've been flying over the lake, and you look down through the water column to the bottom of the lake in 20 feet of water, and it looks as if there is no water there at all.
At all.
It's so clear. It's so beautiful. And that's what we're trying to protect.
Yes, absolutely, and apparently doing a good job. Look, what's the website?
LakeGeorgeAssociation.org.
Okay, LakeGeorgeAssociation.org. I encourage you to do two things. Find out about the boat inspections to make absolutely certain, if you have any friends coming, that you know where the 6 stations are around the lake, so the boats will be inspected before they go in the water. And take a look at the pictures of the invasive species that are on the lake, so you might recognize them, so you can either report it to the Lake George Association or take care of it yourself. And and any homeowner on the lake or business owner on the lake, please be careful of the runoff, because the fertilizer to keep your grass nice and green is also the first fertilizer that the milfoil really probably appreciates.
Right.
Well, it's this time of year. I can't wait to be out there.
It's a beautiful time to be on Lake George.
And thank you for taking the time to come in and giving us an update.
Thanks for having me down.
Great to see you, Walt.
Good to see you too.
Okay, see this interview again. You can head to our website, looktvonline.com.